Welcome. I appreciate each of you coming and testifying today. You know, I recognize that a lot of folks in the media are, and even some members of this committee, are praising your companies for taking active steps to police some of the content on your sites. But I have to note that doing so raises troublesome concerns at the same time, particularly given the percentage of news and political information that Americans receive online through social media or through other online avenues. The prospect of Silicon Valley companies actively censoring the speech or the news content is troubling to anyone who cares about a democratic process with a robust First Amendment. Take one example, which is Google. In December of 2015, a professor at Northwestern University conducted a study analyzing Google search results. He searched for the names of all 16 presidential candidates at the time and discovered that Democrats on average had 7 favorable search results among Google's top 10, and Republican candidates had 5.9 positive articles. And indeed, of the major candidates at the time, Hillary Clinton had 5 positive search results and only 1 negative on the first page. Donald Trump had 4 positive and 3 negative search results on the first page. Bernie Sanders had 9 positive results without a single negative result on the first page. And a final candidate, the junior senator from Texas, had a total of 0 positive results on the first page. You may well have been citing my colleague from Minnesota on that page.
That is outrageous.
I will note, I will say if there were a Frankenfilter, that might be popular. That same professor ran a second study and found the vast majority of news outlets that were represented in Google searches were left-leaning. It's not just Google. In 2016, it was revealed that Facebook was, quote, curating the list of trending news stories on their website. According to reports, Facebook workers were artificially spiking conservative stories, including stories about former IRS official Lois Lerner, former Navy SEAL Chris Kyle, and positive stories about conservative politicians. The reports also revealed that stories by conservative outlets like the Washington Examiner or Newsmax that were popular enough to be picked up by Facebook's trending stories algorithm were nonetheless excluded until the New York Times and CNN began covering the same stories. Just last month, Twitter barred Representative Marsha Blackburn from advertising her campaign launch video because it deemed a line about her efforts to investigate Planned Parenthood to be inflammatory. The Susan B. Anthony list recently had a video advertisement against a political candidate blocked on Twitter because it referred to partial birth abortion as being akin to infanticide. Now, those are all political positions that people can take in our democratic society. But it is disconcerting if those political positions become a lens through which the American consumers consume news. So I want to ask each of you, do you consider your sites, Mr. Edgett and Mr. Stretch, to be neutral public fora?
Senator, we think of Facebook as a platform for all ideas, and we have boundaries in the sense that we don't permit certain categories of content, such as hate speech, but within those guidelines, we do not in any way discriminate on the basis of viewpoint or ideology.
So I'm just trying to understand, is that a yes or no, whether you consider yourself to be a neutral public forum?
We don't think of it in the terms of neutral, because what we're trying to do actually is provide each user a personalized news feed that will be the content that's most interesting to that user. But we do think of ourselves as, again, within the boundaries that I described, open to all ideas without regard to viewpoint or ideology.
Mr. Edgett, same question.
Free expression and free speech is at the core of the Twitter mission, and we do everything we can to enable that. Obviously balancing things, like Mr. Stretch said, against violence, violent threats, or abuse and harassment. But we believe that allowing the public and open platform that the Twitter serves its community is one that's important to debate and discussion.
And Mr. Chairman, if I can ask a final question, I'm at the end of my time. But how do you respond?
Chairman,
last I checked,
I'm not going to object, but I would note that, Chairman, you and I are the only two who sat through all of this today, and I would like to have a chance to ask a question before the vote's over.
Question.
But of course, I'll let Senator Cruz go ahead.
Go ahead.
How do both of you respond to the public concerns and growing concerns that your respective company and other Silicon Valley companies are putting a thumb on the scale of political debate and shifting it in ways consistent with the political views of your employees?
Senator, again, we think of ourselves as a platform of all ideas, and we aspire to that. We are acutely aware of the possibility of unconscious bias across a range of issues, not just politics, and we train our employees on that for that precise reason. We want to make sure that people's own biases are not brought to bear in how we manage the platform.
Similar at Facebook or at Twitter, we are spending a lot of time training these employees who are looking at user reports on organic tweets. We have stricter policies around advertisements. The one you referenced is an example of that, where since we are serving those ads to folks who aren't following the accounts and haven't asked to see the content, we want to make sure it's always a positive experience. But even there, we're making tough calls, and we're learning from mistakes and revising policies and procedures going forward. But our goal and one of our fundamental principles at the company is to remain impartial.
Thank you.
Chairman, as I said, you and I are the only two that sat through all.
Fallout surrounding the so-called Trump dossier. This week, we learned that the Clinton campaign and the DNC spent several $1 million to pay for a phony dossier filled with dirty Russian sources. Here's Clinton's former spokesman on that.
Just to be clear, Brian, you have said previously in the last 24 hours you don't believe Hillary Clinton knew about this either. Is that right?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't asked. I haven't spoken to her. No.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Shouldn't she know? Shouldn't you, someone so high up in the campaign, be informed of this?
Well, I mean, she may have known, but the degree of...
Totally denied this. She didn't know anything. She knew nothing. All of a sudden it found out. What I was amazed at, it's almost $6 million that they paid, and it's totally discredited. It's a total phony. I call it fake news. It's disgraceful.
Joining me now, editor-in-chief of DailyWire.com, Ben Shapiro, and Democratic strategist Richard Fowler. So, Ben, let's start with you. Do you believe Hillary is lying when she claims she didn't know about funding the fake dossier, or do you believe she's so incompetent that her campaign was spending millions and she just didn't know?
I find it highly implausible that she didn't know that the campaign was spending millions of dollars on the dossier. The big question here is going to be what level of culpability she holds for the dossier, including sources that are clearly inside the Russian government, especially while the entire campaign was going out there claiming that Trump was colluding with Russia in order to take down Hillary. Now it looks like there's a fair bit of evidence that the Hillary Clinton campaign was at least working with a spy who was working with the Russian government in order to dig up dirt on Trump.
Let me ask you that, Richard. Same question. Did she know? Yes or no?
I don't know.
You don't know. Do you think she should have known?
I mean, I think we have to figure. I think we should ask the Clinton campaign. We should ask Hillary Clinton these questions. I think they paid this company to do opposition research, and as part of that opposition research, it seems to be clear from the evidence that this individual worked with the Russians to dig up information on the president. And I do.
So she paid for a guy to work with Russians.
No, excuse me. She paid for a firm. This particular, based on this evidence,
worked with Russians.
Went to the Russians and got information.
Okay.
If this is true,
did she collude with the Russians?
I don't know.
Well, you just said she paid money to have a guy.
You're asking me like I work for the. You're asking me like I work for the Clinton campaign.
Well, I'm just using your same argument that you used against Don Jr.
I didn't use that argument against Don Jr.
Your party said that was collusion.
Whoa. Hold on. Let's be. There was emails released, and I've said, and you've heard me say this. I said it on the 5. I've said it with you. I've said it over and over again. You can't use a group of leaked emails to make facts off of them. We only saw some of these emails, not all these emails. Mueller has seen all these emails. Mueller and his team is the only person who knows what actually happened in that meeting, and the obvious people in the meeting who know that. So we have to wait to see with this investigation what they know and we have to wait to see what happens at the end of that investigation. Okay. But let's be very clear here. He met with these particular Russian lawyers about adoptions and sanctions and other things, and we have to wait to see what happens.
I don't think Don Jr. ever paid anybody millions of dollars. Ben, let me ask you a question. If the FBI or the Department of Justice under President Obama used this fake dossier paid for by Hillary as the basis to ask for FISA warrants to spy on Trump campaign officials, how wrong would that have been?
So the big question here is whether every claim in the dossier is untrue or whether the most spectacular claims in the dossier, the P tape and all that nonsense, whether only that part is untrue. It's possible, to give the FBI the benefit of the doubt, it is possible that the FBI looks at the dossier, they go and they independently verify some elements of the dossier and use that as an excuse for a FISA warrant. If they didn't do that, if they just took the dossier at face value, or if they knew that the claims in the dossier were not true and then they went and got a FISA warrant based on that, and a FISA judge ruled wrongly based on that, then that would obviously be scandalous. It would be the politicization of the FBI on behalf of the Clinton campaign.
And it's funny because the FBI and the Department of Justice have not really been forthcoming about the dossier, if there was money that changed hands, if that was used as a justification. But I want to get to Richard on something. Uranium One. Is this a big problem for the Clintons? Because as you know, millions of dollars, over about $145 million poured into the Clinton Foundation right before, during, and after she checked the box to sign off on allowing Russia to have access to 20% of the uranium deposits in North America.
So a couple things on this Uranium One deal. Thing number one, there was 9 government agencies that was part of the commission that made the decision to give 20% of our uranium to this particular company, number one. Number two, and more importantly, the individual that we're talking about here who gave money to the Clinton Foundation divested 3 years prior to ever giving money to the Clinton Foundation. And number three, Jesse, I understand the concern. I understand why people in America are concerned about this uranium deal. And if they are concerned, let's not waste time with a political hearing. Let's not waste time with Trey Gowdy and Devin Nunes having a committee hearing about this. And let's actually have seasoned professional prosecutors look at the evidence. Let's have a grand jury impaneled, and let's see if Hillary Clinton, her State Department, and the Clinton Foundation actually engaged in wrongdoing. And if there was criminal malfeasance, and let's move on.
That's a
but
fair
let's
assessment.
not play political games.
Okay,
with
well,
this.
I mean, it's politics, so their games are going to be played. Real quick, Ben, I want to get your take. Greg Jarrett, over our guy at Fox News, said that there are some possible crimes Hillary could be facing if indeed this is as bad as it looks. Racketeering, there's a bribery, there's a wire fraud possibility. How do you see this playing out? Is it going to get worse, this uranium deal?
I'd be surprised if it doesn't. I mean, obviously, I agree with Richard that maybe a special counsel should be appointed to take a look at the uranium deal and investigate the FBI and the DOJ, too, because obviously they knew that there was corruption going on between Rosatom, the Russian Atomic Energy Agency that was responsible for this deal, and the Russian government, and they'd said nothing at the same time that this deal was being approved. So a special prosecutor seems like a serious possibility here. This is not a place where criminal activity is utterly off the wall. It's definitely possible that something criminal here happened. I do definitely agree with Richard that a full investigation is warranted.
Okay. Ben, Richard, thank you.